Hi, and welcome to the Ask Dr. Angela podcast with everyone's favorite OBGYN, Dr. Angela Jones. Have you ever been too embarrassed or shy to ask your own doctor about your, girl parts? Well, you've come to the right place to get straight answers. Feel free to ask Dr. Angela anything women's health related. Obstetrics and gynecology? She keeps it real. Pregnancy? She's been there, done that. Menopause? She'll get you through. Young or old, Dr. Angela's got you covered, girl. Now here's Dr. Angela.
What's good, people? This is Dr. Angela, everyone's favorite OBGYN, and I would like to officially welcome you to episode 332 of the Ask Dr. Angela podcast. So how's your weekend? It's like Sunday, it's cold here, it's raining, it's overcast. My weekend's actually been pretty good. I stayed in. Still not a lot to do. I know some people are doing a lot, but I'm not doing a lot. So I had actually a dog training lesson with my puppy Snickers, and I had a fantastic guitar lesson. So loving playing the guitar. It certainly is, a source of relaxation for me. And I also did a kick butt workout on Saturday morning. I woke up this morning so sore. My legs are killing me. But anyway, let's just jump right into today's topic, induction of labor. Was your labor induced? Are you currently pregnant and there's talk of inducing your labor? What is induction of labor? So here we go. Labor induction is when uterine contractions are stimulated to hopefully result in a vaginal birth. So there are numerous reasons that induction of labor may occur. Maybe there are maternal indications like gestational diabetes, hypertensive disorders. Maybe there are fetal indications like IUGR, or maybe low fluid around the baby. Technically, that's called oligohydramnios. Sometimes there are social indications, like maybe you live far away from the hospital, or maybe you have a history of sudden labor and delivery. We call that a precipitous delivery. ACOG, or the American College of OBGYN, has historically taken a more hands-off approach where inductions are concerned, and that they don't really recommend induction of labor unless it's medically indicated. So let's talk cervix favorability. We can't talk about induction of labor without talking about cervixes. So cervix favorability has to do with a cervix's dilation, its consistency, i.e., is it hard, medium, or soft? Its position in the pelvis, is it posterior, mid position, or anterior? Its effacement, i.e., how thinned out it is. And also baby's station in the pelvis. How low is baby in the pelvis? Taking all of these parameters into account, something called a Bishop score is assigned. So the Bishop score is a scoring system that determines the readiness of a cervix for labor induction. So based on the previously mentioned parameters, i.e. dilation, consistency, position, effacement, and station, a composite score of 0 to 13 is assigned. Anything that is less than 6 is deemed unfavorable, i.e. the induction is not likely to result in a vaginal delivery. And no one wants that. So what happens when, a cervix is not favorable? Well, then something called cervical ripening might be proposed. And this can either be achieved mechanically or medically. So mechanical cervical ripening usually involves inserting either a Foley bulb or something called a Cook's balloon into the cervix. Either of these, either the Foley or the Cook's balloon, is inserted into the cervix. It's inflated with either sterile saline or water, and that puts the cervix under pressure, causing the cervix to release chemicals called prostaglandins. These prostaglandins, in turn, will cause the cervix to soften, become more effaced, or thinned out, and even in some cases more dilated. Medical induction involves the use of certain medications that contain, guess what? Those previously mentioned prostaglandins. So these medicines can either be taken orally, or they can be placed inside the vagina to cause the cervix to, again, soften or thin out and thus become more favorable for induction. So when the cervix is favorable for induction, oxytocin, which is a chemical given to cause uterine contractions, is given through an IV. So once you start oxytocin, uterine contractions will usually begin within 30 minutes or so. Oxytocin can be given either to induce labor or augment or speed up a labor that has already begun. If your water doesn't break spontaneously, something called an amniotomy might be performed at some point during your induction by your OBGYN. An amniotomy is typically done by your OB using a special instrument to put a small hole in your amniotic sac. The amniotic sac is what baby's floating around inside your uterus. Once this is done, your contractions are likely to become more intense or sometimes more frequent. So if you are considering an induction, or it's something that has been suggested to you by your OBGYN, have a frank discussion regarding the indication, pros and cons, and whether this is something that is right for you. If the induction is for a medical or a fetal indication, the conversation is not so much whether or not it is right for you, because if it's either being done for a medical or fetal indication, then that's a clear reason that the induction is being done. But your conversation might be more around what the process of your induction will look like. Check out this blog post on AskDrAngela.com. That's AskDrAngela.com. There you can read the entire blog post. It will go into a little bit more detail about some of the things that I've spoken about. And hopefully you'll find this not only relatable, but also informative. And hopefully it will answer any questions that you may or may not have about induction of labor. As is per usual, thank you so much for tuning in. Check out my website, AskDrAngela.com. That's AskDrAngela.com. There you can sign up for my weekly blog post, my weekly podcast, as well as weekly YouTube videos. The way that it usually works is I try to do a podcast and video on whatever blog topic we're addressing during that week. The podcast is not just on iTunes, so when you go, you'll be able to, for you Android users, click whatever podcast media you use. There's Spotify, iHeartRadio, and, if you just go, I'm sure that we have your platform listed. Also, make sure that you please follow me on social media. I'm on Instagram. I am on Facebook. I'm also on Twitter. You can also access those on my website as well. I'm going to leave you with this saying from another one of my favorite books. It's Congratulations, Graduate. I actually got this book as a gift. I want to say when I graduated from high school, which was so many years ago, but I love this book. And so today's quote says, "Some people succeed because they are destined to, but most people succeed because they are determined to." Thank you so much for tuning into today's podcast. Until next time, remember to choose happiness. I cannot wait to reconnect on episode 333 of the Ask Dr. Angela podcast. See you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Ask Dr. Angela podcast. For more information on women's health and the show notes for this episode, please visit Dr. Angela at www.askdrangela.com. While you're there, don't forget to leave your own message for Dr. Angela. See you soon. All of the information provided and discussed in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and should not take the place of consulting a physician. This podcast is not intended to diagnose, treat, or cure any disease or illness and does not and should not replace treatment from a medical professional.